Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Dan Holme. In today's episode, the Nationals win in a big way, and it's being done again on the back of Foster Griffin as it comes by any surprise. 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts. And the bullpen coming through in this game as well, that you saw a great performance from Orlando Rebalta and Justin Lawrence. There is a lot to get into, and thank you for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast, simulcast on the Believe in Nationals podcast feed. So, talking about the Nationals here and that 8-2 convincing win, last night to me felt different. It wasn't one of those chaotic 12-11 games, where your blood pressure goes through the roof. This one was comfortable, that there is a feeling of calm and confidence when Griffin is on the mound. It was a controlled outing, and the offense at the end of the day overwhelmed Houston. Foster Griffin dominated again, and suddenly we have some very interesting questions heading toward the trade deadline. So let's get into it here on the latest edition of the Nats Minutecast, talking about Foster Griffin is an all-star. Because the biggest takeaway from this game is Foster Griffin, right? He isn't pitching like an all-star. He is an all-star, and I don't care, right? If Major League Baseball officially puts him on the roster, the numbers to me don't lie. 7 innings, 1 run, 5 hits, 9 strikeouts, no walks, 99 pitches, 71 strikes. The guy, right when you watch him, is in complete control from the first inning to the 7th. That is a luxury that the Nationals do not have when it's most any other pitcher starting. Now, we have seen good outings from Cade Cavalli and those kind of things, but for me, and I don't think this should come as any surprise, Foster Griffin is the guy on a night-in, night-out basis to get it done. And, the stat that absolutely blows me away, this is now 7 consecutive starts allowing 1 run or fewer. 7, right? And only Steven Strasburg and Jordan Zimmerman have ever done that in Nationals history. Not Scherzer or Gio Gonzalez, not Tanner Roark, only Strasburg and Jordan Zimmerman. Right, and that is elite company that Foster Griffin is keeping right now. His ERA right now sits at 2.77. His WHIP is 1.015, and he's now 10-2. Right? When is the last time the Nationals had a pitcher with 10 wins, and we're not talking about the end of the season? And he should probably be 12-2, if not for a couple of bullpen meltdowns. And after the game, Blake Buterus said, quote, "We feel really good in the dugout when he's on the mound," unquote. And you know what? Every fan, myself included, feels exactly the same way. That when Foster Griffin pitches, you expect him to win. Did I expect that to start the season? I didn't. I didn't have such high hopes for Foster Griffin. I thought Cade Cavalli was going to be just far and away like, wow, that guy is the best. But Foster Griffin, pitching the way he does, that is what aces do. Because we remember when the Nationals signed him from Japan on a 1-year, $5.5 million deal, that, like I said, nobody expected this. Now he's become one of the best stories in baseball. And according to ESPN, he now has a 55% chance of being traded before the deadline. 55! Right? And I get it. I understand the logic. He's on a short-term deal. You could sell high, maybe bring back some prospects, but that hurts to me. Right? Does that hurt to you as well? That we keep bringing in these pieces that have hope, and they're like, oh yeah, he's increased his value. He's played much better. So I suppose we should trade him out of here and get some young talent. That vicious cycle at some point has got to stop. What the Nationals need to do, and this isn't coming as any surprise, they need to take care of the bullpen, number one. And number two, they need to take care of starting pitching. So if you have a guy like Foster Griffin, and I guess this is going to depend on which direction the Nationals go right now, because last checked, they are in fourth place rather in the NL East. If that free falls a little bit more, then I could understand. But if there is a feeling that they're in contention, then I think you keep them on this team. But How do you walk into that clubhouse? That is my big question. And trade a guy who has become your most reliable starter while you're in a playoff race. How do you tell your team, yeah, we know you're winning, but we're putting on this season? I don't know if you can, right? I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can say, yeah, we do know you're winning, but we're punting on this season. You simply cannot do this. And I don't understand the logic if you do come in like that. This is becoming one of the defining decisions, to me, of the Paul Taboni era. How are you going to handle Foster Griffin? Are you going to keep him as a cornerstone starter of your rotation, give him a new deal, or are you going to trade? I'm just at the point as a Nationals fan, because we were talking about C.J. Abrams, a couple of months ago, and now that's kind of cooled off because he's been so good that, I'm tired of getting players, developing players, trading players, bringing them here, developing them into great players, and they're like, yeah, they're good, so now we got to get them out of here. That, to me, is a bit tiresome to me. So, again, a lot of this will be determined on which direction the Nationals are going in, right? If they continue to play meaningful baseball, then I think maybe you keep them around. But it is a tough decision, like I said, that will define the Paul Taboni era, at least of right now. So to wrap up segment one here, Foster Griffin isn't a feel-good story anymore. He's an ace. And the Nationals have to decide whether they're trying to win in 2026 or simply planning for 2027 and beyond. And coming up here after the break, the offense. The offense will not stop. That story straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minutecast. All of your Nationals news in 15 minutes or less. Nationals baseball lives here. This episode also simulcast on the Believe in Nationals podcast feed. So talking about the offense as a strength on this team. As the Nationals down the Stros by a score of 8-2. That offense that we have grown to love this season continues to dominate. So let's get into it. The biggest takeaway in segment 2 is the lineup is officially one of the best offenses in baseball. Not one of the better young offenses, not one of the more surprising offenses, one of the best offenses in baseball, period. And did you see this coming last winter when we talked about it, when I talked about it? This is a season of assessment, to kind of temper expectations. One of the best offenses in baseball. The Nationals now lead Major League Baseball with 508 runs scored. They lead the National League with 132 home runs. They lead all of baseball with 100 stolen bases. And you think about that for a second. This organization spent years trying to find offense. Now they're scoring 8 runs so often that we're almost becoming numb to it. The Nationals have scored 8 runs, 10 runs, 9 runs, 12 runs, 8 runs in 5 of their last wins. That the offense has come alive. And, I think it's easy for people outside of the market to say, well, yeah, you did that against poor teams. And, well, there's been some of that. But the Nationals have also handled their business against better teams as well. And you take a look at it. Those runs that I spoke of, that is, to me, absolutely absurd. And the stars keep showing up. James Wood. How much more can we say about James Wood? Walked 3 more times. Not the offense that you were looking for, but a little bit of discipline at the plate goes a long way. He now has 13 walks and only 3 strikeouts in July. And you look at that, right? That's kind of crazy. 13 walks, 3 strikeouts, superstar stuff. And if I have to say the feel-good story of the 2026 season, look no further than Luis García Jr., a home run machine, walk, single, 3-run homer, career high 20 home runs. For a guy that just, few seasons ago, got sent down to the minors for a while because he was, didn't think he was good enough to be playing. Wow, what has he done? You have to just give a tip of the hat to the player for one, but also the coaches that surround him. And Garcia has hit 11 home runs in his last 18 games. Only 3 players in Nationals history have done that before. Harper, Soto, Schwarber. That's it. And then C.J. Abrams joins the party. Sacrifice fly, 20th home run, 67 RBIs, another huge night from Luis García Jr. The Nationals now have 3 players with at least 20 home runs and 60 RBIs. Only 10 players in all of baseball have reached those numbers. 3 of them, well, they are wearing the curly W. And after the games, Abrams said, quote, "We get on base, we hit balls hard, and we score runs," unquote. Simple, playing simple baseball, and completely true. The Nationals are grinding out at-bats. They're taking walks. They're hitting for power. They're running the bases. They're doing everything. This isn't luck. This is a legitimately dangerous offense. And I want all of us, Nationals fans, to take this in because we've been kind of just disappointed, I feel like, pretty much ever since the World Series year, right? That it's 2019 and after, that it's like, we're building towards something. But every year it's like, when? When is that going to come to fruition? Well, I'm here to tell you in July of 2026, it seems like we're headed in the right direction. The thing that I wish Taboni would take care of more than anything, we know the bullpen is a problem. Fix it. We know the starting rotation needs work. Fix it. That this team would absolutely be in contention for a playoff spot for sure, no doubt about it. Have they, if they would fix the pitching, the bullpen, and the starting rotation, those are the things that need to be addressed. The offense, killing it. We love that. The pitching needs to be addressed. All right, so coming up here after the break, deadline decisions coming. That story next. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. So in segment 3 here, deadline decisions are coming. Because the biggest takeaway is this: the next 3 weeks might define the future of this franchise. Because now, right, the rumors are starting. Foster Griffin could be traded. Keibert Ruiz is reportedly a potential fit for the Rays. And suddenly, the Nats are in kind of a weird spot. They're contenders. Yes, it's not a fever dream. Pinch yourself if you want to. They're contenders. But they're also supposed to be rebuilding. And those two things, right, don't usually happen at the same time. Because let's talk about Ruiz for a minute, right? That, there was a feeling going into the season that you listen to all the insiders that it's pretty much going to be Harry Ford's job, right? This big shiny toy that they got from Seattle. And Keibert Ruiz came on strong, playing very well. And all of a sudden, Millis, right, has been playing pretty well. And that is your number 1 and 2 behind the plate. Didn't see that coming. Ruiz playing very well. And that's the big one to talk about here. But Millis, in his own right, playing pretty good. But let's talk about Ruiz here for a minute, because the Rays reportedly need catching help. And Ruiz is having himself a season. He's hitting. His defense has improved. He's under team control for years. And that's exactly the kind of players teams call about. But here is my question. Why are we automatically assuming the Nationals should sell, right? Playing meaningful games in September matters. The clubhouse is learning how to win. James Wood is learning. Abrams is learning. Luis Garcia, Dale and Lyle, right? And that matters. And when we take a look at it, let's build this towards something that's really good. The numbers are screaming at the front office. This team can absolutely hit. This team can absolutely compete. And if Cade Cavalli returns and Jake Irvin gets healthy, maybe this thing gets even more interesting. And by the way, speaking of Irvin, he faced live hitters for the first time in 6 weeks and is expected to begin a rehab assignment soon. Trevor Williams also threw for 2 2/3 scoreless innings for AAA Rochester. Pitching reinforcements are coming, my friends. There's another reason why these trade deadline decisions are not so simple. So to wrap up segment 3 here, the Nationals have earned the right to make this front office think long and hard before selling off major pieces. This season has changed. The expectations have changed, and maybe the deadline strategy needs to change as well. All right, so coming up after the break, we're going long in this one. Segment 4, the Nationals as buyers or sellers. I'll break it all down straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. This one also simulcast in the Believe and Nationals podcast feed. And if you're listening to this one on the audio side, I plan on hopping on YouTube a bit more. So make sure and subscribe to the Nats Minutecast on YouTube as well. All right, so the biggest takeaway in the final segment of today's show is the Nationals have reached the point where standing still might be the worst thing they can possibly do. And that's where this conversation is at right now. Not whether the Nationals are rebuilding, not whether this season has been a pleasant surprise. The conversation is whether this front office should actually add at the trade deadline. And I know, right? That sounded crazy back in March, and I'm the first one to say it. I'm not a revisionist. I remember what I said. But you look at the facts, right? The Nationals have the highest scoring offense in baseball with 508 runs. Wow, right? They have 3 hitters with 20 home runs and 60 RBIs before the All-Star break. And they won another series against a legitimate playoff team in the Houston Astros. And, they are kind of making a case that they might be in the postseason picture. And at some point, you have to stop saying, well, the projections didn't expect this. Who cares about what the projection said? The games have happened. The standings are real. The players have earned something. Now, am I saying they should go and trade, Eli Willits or Harry Ford or Gavin Fiend for a rental? Absolutely not. That would be irresponsible, but there is a middle ground, right? The front office can buy without mortgaging the future. Go get a reliever. Please, for the love of God, go get a reliever 2 or 3, and maybe a bullpen arm with control beyond this season. Because if you want to track this team for the longest time, this bullpen problem is not a new problem. It's been through different administrations, and it's still the weakness of this organization. But if we're being honest here, the bullpen is the only thing holding this team back. Think about it. Foster Griffin should probably have 12 wins. The bullpen cost him 2 victories. How many games has the bullpen cost the Nationals this year? 5, 6, right? Maybe even more. Even average relief pitching changes the trajectory of this season. Imagine this offense with just a competent bullpen. That is a playoff team. Maybe not a World Series favorite, but a playoff team. And once you get in, right, the playoffs are a completely different animal. Anything can happen. You guys remember 2019? Nobody thought that team was winning the World Series in May. Nobody. The Nationals don't need to become buyers in the traditional sense, but they absolutely should become sellers. Trading Foster Griffin, I think it sends the wrong message to me. You can plant your flag on that one wherever you want. Hit me up on Twitter at DanCaps218. Let me know what you think. Trading Keibert Ruiz, that sends the wrong message as well. You know what it tells the clubhouse? Thanks for overachieving. See you next year. I think the Nationals should push all their chips in. I think this team should bolster, make some key additions in the bullpen and maybe a starter. And and just push all your chips in. Who knows what this team is truly capable of? I'm not selling them short. This team could continue to surprise people through the 2026 season, just like they've been doing. And I don't think, just saying that, we're trading these players that have actually helped us. We're trading Griffin. We're trading Ruiz. I don't think that is fair to this group because this isn't smoke and mirrors anymore. This isn't a lucky month. We're nearly, at the All-Star break right here. This team is good. The offense is elite. The clubhouse believes and the fan base is buying in. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm drinking the Curly W Kool-Aid just like everyone else. And after Wednesday's game, Foster Griffin said, I think there's other all-stars in this locker room as well. And that really stood out to me because this is exactly how this clubhouse feels. They believe in each other. They believe they can beat anybody. And frankly, right, they're starting to prove it. Now the pressure shifts. The players have done their part. The front office has a decision to make. Do you reward this team or do you tell them the future matters more than the present? Because if the Nationals walk into August having traded key contributors while sitting in a playoff race, they are going to be a lot of disappointed players in that clubhouse, and perhaps some players that are going to question the direction of this franchise. Some of those players saying, hey, we had a good chance. You didn't build around us. Maybe I want to see what's behind door number 2. Take a page from hockey. I cover the Capitals. If there's any discontentment now, players are looking for greener pastures that are usually laden with more money. I think the baseball, Major League Baseball can do the same thing. And at the end of the day, we do not want a disappointed clubhouse, and we don't want disappointment in the seats at Nats Park either. So to wrap up the final segment here, the Nationals don't need a blockbuster. They don't need to empty the farm system, but they do need to recognize what is happening. This team has earned the right to compete. And with 1 or 2 bullpen additions, this season could become something nobody saw coming, a genuine playoff chase in Washington. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. And again, if you like this episode, subscribe, follow wherever you find your audio podcasts. And like I said, this summer, I plan on hopping on YouTube a bit more. Check out the Nats Minutecast on YouTube as well. Let's blow this show up. It's been showing some great growth here. And there's a lot of excitement for me covering this team right now, as this team is truly trending in the right direction. Get on board. Get on board with the Nats Minutecast, as I have you guys covered all the way in the 2026 season. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. And I'll talk to you again next time.